My name is Elena Shvab and I'm a hat designer. I live and work in London. I make hats for nearly 7 years and I absolutely love it. I'm absolutely passionate about hat making. I love this craft and I'm happy to share my knowledge and my experience and share some tips and tricks that you can use for your hat making. So today's webinar is about hat blocks, and I find this subject is the most important because hat blocks is the basic tool you need in order to create a hat. So of course the alternative ways of making a hat, you can just use a wire or you can create free form shapes, but the basic of the basics, creating a Fedora hat, wide brim hat, even a fascinator, you need a hat block. You need a shape, a mold to stretch your material over to create a beautiful shape. So traditional hat blocks are made of wood and they've been created for nearly 200 years for now, and they're made of wood. They could be made of different types of wood, but in our days mostly they're made from the wood that is named linden. The best part of this wood is that it's quite soft, so for the hat block makers it's very easy to create a shape, to carve even the finest details, which is great for us, for millineries. And also it's a quite soft material, so it's easier to block, to use pins inside in order to secure the materials. From my experience, I noticed that most of the vintage hat blocks, they're made of quite hard material, which makes it very strong and it lives longer, that's for sure. But it's quite challenging to use the pins, because in that case you need to use your thimble and hammer. So it's like a hardcore. With the modern hat blocks and the use of a softer wood, it's much easier and much enjoyable process of blocking a hat. So let's look at different shapes. The classic shape, and that I would recommend for everyone who's just starting out, this is the basic shape. It's called dome shape, the shape of our head, which is great for creating crowns of this shape, or creating fascinator, because all you need to do for small base of the fascinator is just this slightly rounded shape, because it mimics the shape of the hat. So the standard size for women is 57 centimeter or 22.5 inch. For men is 59 centimeters or 23 inch. Of course, it's just the statistics. For myself, for my clients, I used usually 56, 57, but I also had clients with a head size of 52 or 53. So you never know, but standard size is considered as 56 to 57 for women. So when ordering your first hat block, you might invest in this shape. That was the first shape I got for myself, because there are so many things that I could do with it. How to measure head of your size of your head? We need a measuring tape. And it goes all around, above the ear, at the back. So you have to measure the widest parts of your head, here and here. And that's how you make the exact size, how you measure the exact size of your head. Also try not to stretch too hard the measuring tape, because if you stretch it too much, and the size will be slightly of the hat will be slightly less than the hat of the client or a customer, or if you make it for yourself, so it will be quite tight on your head. So always try to keep the measuring tape slightly loose. It will be much more comfortable to wear a hat when you've finished it. Hello everyone who joined now. Also tools that might help for blocking, those are called collars. These ones. So let's say you have a brim. In order to create a shape, you need to put together a crown and a brim if you're blocking them separately. So having a collar is really helpful because it will create that side on the brim that you can attach with the crown later. It will be much easier. Of course, you can block without it and then manipulate the material with your hands, with the iron, or with the scissors, whatever is easiest for you. But when you have the collar, you just simply attach it with a hat block, and then you can secure the part with the rope and stretch it all over. So it's quite helpful. And another thing that is really helpful for during the blocking is a stand. So imagine when you're blocking, you have to stretch, right? So when you have a stand, it really helps not to just hold the hat block and then stretch each side separate, but you can stretch simultaneously. Also, it helps if your brims have a little stand, like this one here. So you can stretch the material with your both hands without worrying that you don't have enough space here because the bottom of the brim is on the table. So those are very useful tools. If you have a chance to order them or to purchase them, that's great. But if you don't, there's alternatives that you can use. So I would like to show you, or if I can find it. Okay, first of all, you can always use a hat box, a shoe box. A shoe box, it's a great alternative tool. You see it's already damaged and deformed from all the blocking. So you just put it on the shoe box and you have enough space here to stretch the material, you see, for your hands. So the blocking process goes really smooth and quite easy. And I also want, here it is. This is a collar that I made of a carton. So I just measured the size of the crown, just like that, and then I cut the same shape from the carton. I created several layers, so it could be so quite thick, and then I could attach it to a brim, and that makes the blocking process much easier. So you can create this several ones for different blocks, hat blocks, and then use it during the blocking if you don't have this wooden collar. Hello from Sydney, Australia. Wow. It's quite late there. My. Okay, we continue. So another thing to pay attention when you decide to buy or invest in a wood hat block is always check with the designer, with the hat block maker, all exact details. What is the name of the wood? How tall is going to be the crown? I'm specifically highlighting that because once I already made a mistake. This particular hat block, this crown, it was my first hat block I ordered, and I didn't even think to mention how high I want this crown to be. So the master made it quite tall, so it looks very, very tall on the hat. So every time I block a hat, I have to cut it at least 2-3 centimeters. So that made it impossible to block the crown and the brim together. So every time now I have to take them apart and block separately. So pay attention and discuss it with the hat block maker how tall you want it to be. It very much depends on the design of your hat or on your customer and so on. So pay attention to that. And also check if you buy hat blocks or vintage hat blocks, and that's the first time that you do, also always check the circumference of the brim, for example, because sometimes they look quite big on the picture, but when you when you check the actual size, it might be quite small. So always check the sizes of the crown and of the brim, the hat size, also some of the hat blocks, some of the hat brims, you see they have this oval shape here, so that's exactly for the crown. So if it's too small or too big, you might somehow need to adjust while blocking both crown and a brim. So also pay attention to this part. And it's quite handy when you have crown and a brim that you can put together and block it as one piece. But on the other hand side, I always like to mix and match different crowns and brims to create different hats. So it's not always necessary that you can you have to block as the whole hat as one piece. So how to protect your hat blocks? First of all, before you start blocking, always cover them with cling film. Regular cling film that you can find in the kitchen, or you can use a cellophane bag, but please note that no prints should be. So white or transparent bag, because if you block and you use the heat of the iron or when you're steaming, the print of the bag might be transferred to your hats, and especially with those bright hats, well, you might have a very beautiful print on it by the end of the blocking. So the best is just use regular cling film. It's easy to use, easy to wrap the hat. Try to avoid a lot of folds, so try to wrap it neatly and accurately around the hat. So why do we need to do that? When blocking, we use a lot of steam. Steam is a moisture. Wood and moisture don't really like each other. So obviously all the hat blocks are covered with the special paint or lac or whatever it is, but still, if you always keep your hat blocks exposed to direct steam, they won't survive too long. And also, after you finish blocking, in order to remove the hat, it's much easier when you have something covered. So you will remove smoothly the hat after it's dry. So another thing you can do, and please always do that after you finished blocking, and I left this cling film here on purpose to show you. After you finish blocking, just take it off and let the wood breathe. And always keep your hat blocks like that, without the wrapping paper. Cling film, sorry. Okay, so there's so many different shapes of hat blocks. The most popular ones are Fedora or Trilby. The only difference they have is just the brim. Fedora has a slightly wider brim, and Trilby is slightly smaller brim, and it's twisted, it's folded up. Pork pie is quite popular, especially among musicians. one of the hits of the season is a crown, this one, and they come in a variety of different shapes and also sizes. They come as flat or they come as rounded. Quite easy to block this shape, and it looks very beautiful. And of course, for shapes like that, it's very useful if you have a stand, so it's much easier for you to block, or for shapes like this. So if you can see, there's a gap, so that's the special gap to use it to attach it to the stand. Also, hat blocks, if you noticed on a brim, all of them have these gaps, right? So why are they needed? It's actually helping you to block. When you stretch the material, you use a rope or shoelaces in my case all around the hat block, and it keeps the material in place. And this is quite handy, so you don't really need to use a lot of pins or needles or whatever you're using for blocking. Just stretching the cord around the hat block, and it just keeps the material in place. So you also can use a rope right here, so you avoid a lot of pins. Also good tool is to use a Petersham ribbon. It's flat and it's perfect, and it's also white, so it keeps the material in place as well. But try to use white or very bright colors, because dark colors might also transfer the dye onto your felts, especially if they're bright. So so those are wooden hat blocks. Of course, the positive side of wooden hat blocks, they last long, especially vintage ones. I mean, look at this. I don't know how old this hat block is, but it looks like new, and it will serve the purpose for many years ahead. But the negative side of hat blocks is that it's quite expensive investment, especially when you're just starting out. So when I started hat making, I didn't really have a chance or opportunity to buy expensive hat blocks, because they do cost money. And I had to find some other alternative ways of how to use hat blocks without investing too much money, at least at the beginning, while I'm learning, while I'm still figuring out what type of hats I would like to create. Because what's the point of investing a lot of money in something that you will figure out later that you don't really need, that it's not even your style, and it will be just dusting on the shelf. So that's why I decided to learn different techniques of how to create alternative hat blocks from alternative materials. Obviously they don't last too long, but at least it's enough to create quite enough shapes and to practice your skills and to learn and understand what exactly shapes you would like to create. Okay, so what are the materials we can use for hat making? There are several quite affordable materials. One of them is Styrofoam. Styrofoam is made of it is used for soundproofing for the building. But it's perfect material for carving hat blocks, because it's quite it's relatively soft and very easy to carve. They come as yellow or blue, from what I know. Let me show you. This is made of blue styrofoam. it has a very thin density, so it allows you to create a very fine decor. I think this is the only material that that you can create any shape that you like. So for example, this hat block I have created from styrofoam. Obviously you have to cover it with different materials in order to protect the material itself, because it's peeling off easily. And another thing that you have to know about this material, it's quite toxic if you breathe it in. So when you work with it, always wear a face mask, which is no trouble with that right now nowadays. You wear glasses, and also make sure that you either work outside or in a well-ventilated area, so you don't breathe in the materials, the dust of the material when you're sanding or carving the shape. And the mask, make sure that the mask covers your mouth and your nose completely. Also, no drinks or no food around, because if the dust goes into the food and you eat the food, so it's not good. So please, safety, rules of safety is very much important, so always pay attention to that. So the best thing about styrofoam is that you can easily create all different shapes. It's quite easy, quite fast. If the shape didn't really work out, you can start all over. You can buy flat sheets of styrofoam and then glue them together in order to build a tall piece of styrofoam. If for example, you would like to create something big or tall. So it's not a problem, because it's quite hard to find pieces like this that they're quite high. So most likely you will buy thin sheets of styrofoam and then glue them together. So another thing to consider also making a hat block is that, for example, this one I created quite a few years ago, and I'm going to show you the hat that turned out to be. Is this one. It's really lovely shape. It's a fedora. I would say it's a modern style fedora. The only mistake I made when I was carving this part, I made it too deep. So the trouble is that when I put on the hat, it touches the hat, so it creates a feeling that the crown is quite small. So when you're creating a shape, or when you decide to order a wooden hat shape, it's always great to create first of one of the alternative materials in order to make a hat, and try it on and make sure that it sits perfectly well, and then order the same block made of wood. So styrofoam is a great opportunity for you to create a shape in order to try it first, and then go for wooden hat block if you decide to. What do you carve it with? Different tools, different materials, even sanding paper, whatever can, any material that can carve, you can use them. Even kitchen tools might be helpful. So this is the styrofoam and this particular shape. Every hat block, every material that you're working with, it always cover it with cling film. It doesn't matter if it's a wood or styrofoam or anything else, because you still have to protect the surface, and you still have to help yourself to take the hat off the hat block when it's dry and when it's finished. Okay, so this is about styrofoam, which is a great material. Another material is polystyrene. This one you can, this material is even easier to find. polystyrene. Where do I have any polystyrene? Like this one, for example. This is polystyrene. This material is also quite easy to carve, but it's not as dense as the other material, so it has this little balls that are attached together. So carving this material, it's not perfect for fine shapes as the styrofoam, but it's still great for medium detailed hats, I would say. But it's still very easy to carve, easy to use. It's quite light, which is great. Also, the only thing that you might be careful about is the heat, because both styrofoam and polystyrene have a very low melting point. So if you work with the iron directly, you will burn it in seconds. So what I would suggest is that you can cover it with the thick fabric or felt or anything else that you have at home in order to protect the material. And here, for example, that's the same polystyrene shape, but just smaller. What I did, I just used few layers of fabric, and then I put these thick felt, like crafty felt for arts and crafts fabric. It's not felt for blocking making hats. This felt is just for the arts and crafts. It's quite cheap, so you can cover the hat block, and it will help to protect the material underneath. So another way of creating hat blocks is even easier. It's carton and wire, the materials that you can find in your studio. Cartons is just, you can use boxes or cereal boxes, whatever you can find, just thick carton, scissors, wire, and you can create amorphic shapes. That's what this technique is mostly wonderful for, creating amorphic shapes. And let me show you some of the designs that I created. This one, for example. So you see, it's I wouldn't be able to make this from styrofoam or from polystyrene because it would be quite thin, and the material could break easily. But carton, and because it has wire inside, so it has the structure, something that holds the shape. So you see how strong it is with several layers of carton. It's easy to make, and then you can use it. I have this block for quite some time, for a couple of years, and I absolutely love it. Another one is this. That's the hat that I'm wearing right now. So I made it of carton and wire. And also I have this one that I created of layers of carton glued together, and then I just wrapped it with a sellotape, and I got this little shape, and when I block it, it looks really beautiful, really lovely. And let me show you. Oh, here it is. And that's the hat that I made. Very easy, almost zero investment except of my time, and then I have this beautiful block and I can create this beautiful shape. Okay, and this is about carton and wire. Also, because it's a carton, so it doesn't really like water. Always covered with several layers of cling film to protect, when you're blocking, protect from water all around it. So these are carton and wire. And also the next technique, the next material that you can use is Buckram. It's quite strong material, which is used for creating bases underneath the hat. It's also widely used in theatrical designs and in cinema to create hats or other strong shapes. So there's a technique that you can use. in order to create the shapes, and let me show you some of the examples. Oh, this one. This is one of my favorite hat blocks. It took me quite some time to make it. Yes, this technique is quite time consuming, so you might want to dedicate to it a lot of hours of stitching the pieces of Buckram together, and then stiffening, and then again the layers of Buckram and so on. But at the end, it's quite strong. I used it for 5 years, 6 years, which is impressive. And this is one of the hats that I've created. So it has this shape that is going up on one side and going up on the other side. So it's very beautiful shape, and it's quite original because I personally designed it, I made it, so obviously it's original. So another hat block that I've made is this one, which is quite nice. Sometimes you can just block. Is millinery Buckram different from curtain Buckram? Honestly, I have no idea what is curtain Buckram. I'm sorry, but millinery Buckram is a white or black material with a lot of stiffening. So when you put water on it in order to block it, there's a lot of glue on your hands, and when it dries, it becomes very, very strong. Like relatively strong, stronger than cinnamon, let's put it this way. But if you put a stiffener on top of it, it's like stone strong. So this is Buckram. Buckram is really amazing, lasts longer. The only thing the Buckram doesn't really like, as other materials as well, is heat, and I already lost one of my blocks to heat. I left it to dry in the oven, and I quite forgot about it. So under heat it started deformating, and obviously I couldn't return the shape back to its original shape, so I had to order to invest and order a wooden hat block, because that particular shape was part of my entire collection. So be careful with heat, with iron, with ovens, with steaming. Buckram does not like steaming. If you steam, you have to be quite careful, or support it with something underneath so it doesn't change the shape. Yes, true. So next, I would like to talk about expandable foam. You know, the one that is used for installing in windows, or for building, when the gaps you have to fill in. That's the foam that you use. It just expands. So in millinery, you have to be really creative in order to find all different alternatives, and they all work. Isn't it amazing? So I never used this particular material for hat making before, but I know that they're used and there are techniques, and this particular technique you can find in the Hat Talk magazine. It's in issue 173. And for those who would like to try this technique, it will be very useful to read the article. Highly recommend it. So Hat Talk magazine, issue 173. Yes, 173. I just checked it. And just type in the search hat block making, and you will find it. I've used foam spray to make molds. Oh, that's wonderful. So how was the experience? I hope it worked. I would love to see how it turned out. Do you get your Buckrams from millinery stores or regular fabric stores, the different grades of Buckram? You can buy Buckram at any millinery or in some specific fabric shops, Parkin Fabrics, based in England, Manchester, they do have it. I don't remember about other suppliers, but most of them do have. And the difference between double-sided, double stiffened buckram and one-sided stiffened buckram. I always work with double-sided because I need it to be quite strong. So I could not say about one side, so I assume it's just less strong as the first one. Sorry. So another technique, casting tape. The one that you use for crafts or for arts and crafts. It's more challenging to work with the hat blocks, with the cast stripes, but it's easy to, for example, if you like some particular shape, you can use this casting tape in order to wrap the shape, and when it's dry, you just take it off and you put more layers in order to create a shape. So I use this from one of the cheap polystyrene shapes that I found in £1 shop, and I just created the shape, and I blocked a few hats using this. You can always cover it with some material because it's quite hard, so it's quite challenging to use pins. But if you cover it with a fabric or a felt, that would be much easier to block. And there was another shape, also one of the first hat blocks that I made. Back then I had no idea what I was doing, but it turned out quite nicely, and I had a really beautiful shape made of it. The only thing that with time it started breaking, so it's a great alternative for maybe making few hats or creating experimental mold before you decide to order a wooden hat block. So this is perfect for just few hats to make. Another alternative, you can always use clay. It's quite cheap. You can buy it in a big, massive bags, and you can create beautiful shapes just using your hands, and because it's much easier to control your hats creating a shape rather than shaping with the tools. And obviously when it dries, it's very, very heavy. But what you can do also, because you cannot use pins when the clay is dry, but what you can do is to wrap it again, block a felt over it in order to create a layer of something soft, and that's what you can use for using the pins for blocking. Okay, so this is about clay. So I'm sure there are many other materials that you can use for hat block making, and if someone experimented with different techniques, please do share here so others can see what was your experience, and so let's learn from each other and share our knowledge and how exactly you what kind of shapes you made of those particular materials. So the next part I wanted to talk about is different objects that we can find at home and we can use it for hat making. So we don't have to invest anything, just our imagination, just opening our eyes, just being curious, asking a question, can I use this or can I use that? And you might open the whole world of possibilities of different objects and materials that you can use for hat blocking. So let me show you a teeny tiny collection of objects that I use. First of all, Styrofoam Hat, I think it's usually used for wigs, but it's not great for blocking a crown because the hat is quite small. But you can use this part for making small bases for fascinators. This is perfect shape, just exactly like our hat, which creates a perfect fascinators. The only thing you have to do is just to cover the polystyrene, because, well, as I said, it has a very low melting point, so just cover it with a fabric or with felt or whatever you can find, so just to avoid a direct heat of the iron touching the polystyrene, because it will melt in no seconds. And it's a lid. I found it quite useful, also with the times when I didn't really have any hat blocks or didn't have the hat blocks that I needed, but I had a hat, and I needed to well, the brim of the hat was very deformed, so I needed to fix it. In order to fix it, I need a very similar shape to the brim. So you can use the lid, but ideally try to find a bigger one. This is quite small, that all I have had in the kitchen just to show you. Just try to find a bigger lid. It's not a problem on the market, and they're not really expensive. So, and for example, if you have a hat, you can just use the lid, steam it, steam the hat with just a little bit of steaming, and then you can, using your hands, mold the hat and fix the brim using the support of the lid. So that's also quite a useful tip that you can use for hat making. When your metallic foil or cling film is finished, don't throw this out. Those are quite useful. They're perfect for making decorations for fascinators and or creating any other tubular shapes. You just wrap around and then steam a little bit, and then you can have a really beautiful decorations. And one of these days, just go to Poundland or any other store, or go on eBay and just try and find different polystyrene shapes. This is a little hot. I never used it, but I might have a chance. I can create a beautiful hat for St. Valentine's or for any purpose. And the different shapes that you can use, balls and hearts and anything. Especially in the art stores, there are a lot of different shapes for crafts, so you might use it just for block making. This is one of the hat blocks that I made from styrofoam, and when I carved it, it appeared to be smaller than I needed, so I covered it with a layer of a straw just to make the size bigger, and it worked perfectly. I made a hat for Royal Ascot. It was all decorated with feathers and was very beautiful, but I didn't have a hat block, so I made it myself. So that's how you can create a custom hats for your clients or for yourself, just making an alternative, using alternative materials in order to create shapes. Oh, and the most important thing, the wooden bowl. Any wooden bowl, it's wood, it's like a hat block, it's really amazing, quite strong, so you can use either just this side for trimmings, or you can just turn it upside down and you have a flat shape for boat or for any other hat that you want to create. It's just absolutely perfect. So what I want to say is just, you know, be creative. Just look at the object and think, what else can you use it for except for just the fruits or for cooking. So you might find all different variations for hat making. And so let me show you one of the examples. This hat, well, this is a trilby. brim, but also I don't think it was designed for just the stand, but I wanted to create a little boat hat, but I didn't have a block and I didn't have the time, so I just flipped it over and it looked, well, it just looks nice. And that's the hat that I made. Very easy and very beautiful. So if you have any questions, please do ask. Yes, be creative. That's the most important thing. So what I'm going to show you right now, a technique how to expand the size of your hat blocks, make them slightly bigger. A few years back, when I just started making hats, I found a very beautiful hat block on eBay. It was vintage hat block. It was quite cheap, relatively cheap, and I decided, okay, I have to buy it. After it arrived and I measured the size of the hat, I realized that that's something I didn't think through because the size was very small. It was 54 centimeters. That there's not much I can do with the regular hat size is 56, 57. So what I needed to do is just to make it a little bit bigger. So this is the hat block. That's the same hat block that I purchased back then, and the hat size is very, very small. So I'm going to show you a technique that you can use to make it bigger. We're going to need, let me just clear up the space. Ideally we need a fabric, non-woven, ideally knitted. Knitted fabrics, they stretch really, really great. Much better than that woven fabric. And since it stretches really well, because it has quite a loose weave, it's easy to block it over. Or you can use other materials. I think this is for the furniture, used for the furniture. It's quite it's thicker than this fabric, and it's quite stretchy, so it's also great to use. So you just have to decide how bigger you want your hat block to be. If it just if you need to expand it just a little bit, you use a thin fabric. It's easier to control. If you need a size bigger or size and a half, use something thicker. Also pay attention that when you're using felts or materials over your hat block, so all these edges, they become more rounded because of the material. So if just pay attention to that and take it into consideration. So what you do, you take a fabric and make sure that you can overlap and take sharp scissors and simply cut around. Just like that. And what I'm going to do next is just simply stretch it all over the hat block. So you can use the pins to secure it so it stays in place, but stretch it well so that material does not move. Just like that. make sure that you stretch the material without leaving any folds. Can you see? I'm trying to make it faster than usual, so I'm making mistakes. So the bottom line, now I'm gonna need sellotape. Ideally try to use without the print, but I don't have anything else, and it's just for demonstration because this might transfer the paint on your hats. Yes, you can. Great, thank you. So any other questions, please do ask, because we are reaching the end of the webinar, and I will try to go through them and answer. I'm just using the tape, and I'm stretching it towards the end like this. So first I used pins just to keep the material in place. That's a bit, and I'm using sellotape just to stretch it all the way around. Alternative way of expanding the hat block shape is using a felt or a few felts if you want the shape to be bigger. But the only trouble that this technique works for quite flat shapes. The fabric, you can use it only for flat shapes. But felts you can use for fedoras or any other hat blocks, because you're sort of like blocking a hat, but you're not going to take it off. I'm just going to leave it there like this. So obviously it's best to do it neatly and more accurately, and I would just use more sellotape to keep it in place and avoid any folds so that the shape is quite smooth. And this one is covered with felt. So there are a few different ways. You can use a non-woven fabric, or you can stretch a hood over the hat block, any shape you like. You can reuse the old hat or vintage stores. You don't have to invest into expensive hood, but just buy anything that is even damaged, because all you need is just to make the shape bigger. That's what it serves for. So there are two different techniques of how to expand the size of the hat. Also, I have a video on my YouTube channel that shows step-by-step tutorial how to do that. So if you would like to see the process from the beginning to the end, please go on my YouTube channel and you can see the video. And also, before you start blocking, don't forget to put the cling film on top of this. So any questions so far? So also I wanted to say that thank you so much for joining. We're reaching the end, and I know there's so much more I would like to tell you about the hat blocks and show you different techniques, but there's just a limited time. But if you're interested in making hat blocks, I have workshops available online and in person for creating different techniques, working with Buckram, how to use it, how to make it stronger, how to create different shapes, how to curve styrofoam and polystyrene, what finishing materials is best to use so the hat blocks last longer. How to use wire and carton in order to create beautiful amorphic designs which you can create a really beautiful unique shapes. So please, if you have any questions about the workshops, any other questions, please do ask. And I do have a little bit of a present for all of you. It's 15% off on all my workshops. For getting the discount, please contact me directly and I'll give you the code that you can use for the discount, and also 20% off for Hat Talk magazine, where you can find a lot of useful information and it's perfect for beginners. And there also you can find a lot of a few tutorials, demonstrations. I've been showing different hats and techniques, how I make them. And please always welcome to my YouTube channel, where I post new hat making videos. They're absolutely free for everyone who wishes to learn. And well, thank you so much. Have a lovely day, and thank you for visiting and for signing up for the webinar. It means a lot to me. Bye. Have a lovely day.